Hey everybody, I want to take a second and show you some impromptu goodness because it is that good. Impromptu, if you don't already know, is a modal, dialog, alert, confirm, whatever JavaScript replacement. It does a lot of cool stuff. You can kind of think of it as not really an image gallery, but you can make an image gallery with it. It's more suited around forms and tooltips and product tours and more functional things. So let's jump right in. There's a tour time you land on the documentation page at the top, and you can see it's got different positions on the page, different text for each position, and it's pretty slick. So that's a quick intro to what it can do. Let's take a look at how you do it. And as you look through the documentation, there's options and functions. The full API is documented, events, and then you get to the examples. The first example you're going to see, it's really simple. You can pass just a string of either text or HTML. You can use your templating engine to create a HTML string. It doesn't matter. And that's all there is, just to create a simple form. Now, of course, that's not very detailed. That's very simplistic. Well, one of the two reasons I built Impromptu was for buttons and for forms. And so the second example really shows buttons. You can pass text. It doesn't have to be OK and cancel. It can be, a text label with whatever value. It should be a simple value. It can't be complex objects, strings, numbers, booleans. And here's what you get. You can see the text we specified, and you get two different buttons. You can create as many buttons as you want. Of course, real estate is limited, so it's all dependent on how wide your modal is, how much size you've got available. As we move on down, I want to show you, this is quickly how you can determine what button was clicked. I'll open my console here and run this again, and if we click yes, it's going to be true. If we click no, it's going to be false. That was what we defined back here. So yes, I'm ready is true, no, let's wait is false. So let's click yes, I'm ready, and look at the console, and true. That was the V parameter of the submit callback. If we run it again and click no, we get false. So that tells you which button was clicked, and that's pretty easy. I don't know how you can get much simpler than that. You don't have to bind to each button and all that stuff. Impromptu handles it for you. One submit function that handles everything. You can do what you need to do with it. I didn't really see the need in having to bind to each individual function. That's useful in some cases. I think jQuery UI does it like that. But for me, it was just one submit function, because some situations I had multiple, keeping it dry, I had multiple directions I would go according to what was clicked, and there's no need in recopying everything. Just one submit function was fine. Another cool feature is states, and what that means is you've got sort of pages, and you can transition from page to page, much like a book or something. So with each state, a state is a collection of states, is just options. You tell it the names of each state, and then you define your HTML and your buttons for each state. So there's a set of options for each state, and what that does is we start on the first state, and we've got the buttons for the first state, and I click next, and it goes to the second state. I told it to go to the second state, but that's how it works. And so I've got the custom set of buttons for that. So you can define your buttons for each state. And the way I got it to navigate each one, you just grab the API, and in the submit function you just say, go to state 1, and it's really that simple. It's nothing outrageous. Now, one cool feature that just got brought up in Impromptu 5 is substates. And if you've used Apple OS X, you've probably seen before, when you go to confirm an option, a smaller window pops open, even smaller than the one you've already got open, that says, are you sure? Do you confirm? And that's essentially what a substate does. So I've got a little demo here of terms of use. And so if I click agree, you see a smaller window pops open. And that can be anything. It's just a regular state. It's got its own buttons. It's got its own text. It can have its own title. And that gives you an extra layer of functionality without completely leaving the state you were on. So the previous state remains visible, and you can open a smaller state on top. And the way you do that is just as easy as anything else. You have the same way you generally define states, your HTML buttons, submit function, and then when you say go to state, you just pass the second parameter as true. That is, if that couldn't be harder, I don't know. I try to make it as difficult as possible, but that's all I could come up with. So there is sarcasm there. That was pretty simple. There really wasn't a need to make the states any different because they have the same attributes. It's just how you transition to it. So building on states, we moved to the tour type functionality, and they're really just states too. Everything's built around states. The tour functionality comes in with a position option, and you can see here I specify a position for each tour state, and you can bounce to and from positions. Each state can go, navigate to the H1 element, and then you offset it by your X and your Y, and you can tell it how wide you want it, where you want your arrow. For here I say top center, and it will navigate to each one. And of course in our tour submit we use our function callback, and we tell it to go to previous state, go to next state. And so let's run it. We've already seen this once, but you can see kind of how it works. I told it to go to the H1 element, arrow top center, and a next button, and it navigates to the next one. And I told it to have a top left arrow, a previous and a next button, and so on. So that's how that works. Now, I mentioned there were two reasons I built Impromptu. One was buttons. The second one was forms. And forms was, the daily thing I do is form processing. And so I saw a repetitive task each time in a modal that just said, I'm having to collect these form values every time, and it's a pain because you've got checkboxes that may have multiple values. You've got, select boxes which can be single or multiple values, and just having to go through them all every time and collect them was just a pain. So what I did, you'll notice on our callback functions there's an F attribute, and F stands for form values. So let's open up our JavaScript console, and we'll run this example here. And this is very similar to the other ones. There's 3 states. They've all got form values. So let's say Trent Richardson, I'm a male. I travel by car and plane. And you can see each time I submit, every time the submit callback is called, these options were passed to it. And so these are the values that are currently filled out. And so if I click done, here's all of my values that were in that prompt. And so you can see my name, male, I travel, car and plane. It collected, it recognized that select drop down was a multiple, and it grabbed an array of values. It didn't just grab one value. So it's smart. It knows what values were clicked. And that was really the biggest reason Impromptu was created, because it's just so tedious, and you don't want to repeat yourself over and over again collecting form values. This just simplified everything. So that's the gist of the major features of Impromptu. There's a ton of small details, and I outlined some of these details in the ebook. I've put together an ebook. It's got lots of examples. It really goes into detail. There's so many minor things, and even just general JavaScript knowledge of how you should and define these states and buttons, and it really goes into detail. There's a ton of examples. It's, it really can save you some time, and some of the examples may be exactly what you're looking for in your project. You might just be able to grab them and change a little bit of the text in it or HTML and go on about your business. So that's Impromptu. I wanted to give you a quick tour, and besides the Impromptu tour, because that was pretty cool too. And just check it out. There's also GitHub, And if you find any issues, file an issue on GitHub. If you have any fixes or feature requests, send them over. I mean, it's I definitely like when I get pull requests for fixes because that makes it really easy. And if you do, there's a dev branch, and sometimes even your issues may already be fixed in the dev branch. They have to go through dev before they make it to master because, of course, they need to be tested out, to make sure there's no bugs in it before it's released. And so head on over there, check it out too. So we've got the documentation in GitHub. Thank you for stopping by, checking it out, and we'll see you next time.